Welcome to the Thriving Musician Podcast, hosted by certified financial planner Spencer List. Tune in to hear inspiring stories from music professionals on their journey to financial independence. Plus, gain valuable insights from industry experts on how to level up your finances, career, and life. Here's your host, Spencer List.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thriving Musician Podcast. Today I have a very special guest in Eden Lopez Robles. Eden is a leader of the LSS Group and brings the resources of RBC Wealth Management to entrepreneurs, retirees, corporate executives, small business owners, entertainment industry professionals, foundations, and institutions that seek to grow their assets. As part of assessing investment solutions, great consideration is given to the liability aspects of the balance sheet and how best to maximize yield curve dynamics. Eden's primary mission is to build tailored portfolios that help address the sophisticated financial requirements of the team's client base. Additionally, she believes financial literacy is fundamental to empowering clients so that they feel confident in advocating for themselves and making informed decisions. Eden has written on topics regarding signs of cognitive decline and how to navigate a divorce when emotions often cloud sound judgment. She is the chairman of the board of directors for MS Hope for a Cure, and in the fall of 2006 was inducted into the National MS Society's Hall of Fame. She lives with her husband and 3 children in Lower Manhattan. Welcome, Eden.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you took the time, and once I learned about you and I had to speak to you, and I'm glad I know you. Can you tell us more about what got you doing what you're doing and working for, the type of people that you work for?
So I sort of got into the industry by accident when I was, graduating college and looking for work. I wanted to go into some sort of sales. I also had a degree in psychology, and I ended up getting a job as a sales assistant in financial services and wealth management. So that grew, and I've actually been with my now same partners for 27 years, which is sort
Amazing.
of insane when I think
Congrats.
about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, my partners and I have been together forever. We're actually the LSS Group, and we run an all-female team, which is highly unusual genetic makeup on Wall Street.
Exactly.
And I in the very early stages of my career, we had literally one client in the music industry, who we still have today, by the way, very well-known name that has sort of spanned his career has spanned decades, and he's reinvented himself in many ways. But and I literally called his business manager for 4 years trying to get a meeting because I was really interested in the industry, and sort of wanted to expand that part of our business. But I didn't understand or know at the time. This is in the late '90s how really to get into it. And I slowly started bringing on different sort of clients within the music industry. It now makes up probably about 30% of our business. It's not our
Mm-hmm.
entire
Sure.
book of business, but it's an important one. And one that I'm sort of most passionate about, I guess you can say.
That's amazing. So do you find that there's any differences in the way you communicate with those clients compared to the rest of your business?
Sure. I mean, logistically, aligning schedules can be challenging,
Yeah.
right? Which could be the same for, a C-suite executive, right, as well.
Yeah.
But, in the music industry, we, well, a number of things. Number one, a lot of them have business managers, which is how they come to me first through their business manager.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, every client is different. So communicating sometimes only goes through the business manager. And then sometimes the clients want to be super hands-on in every conversation they're part of, which I actually really enjoy. That's what I prefer.
Yeah.
Um, but as you know, some business managers take power of attorney and they run the show. So, but for me, I like to suggest that the client is super involved. And it doesn't have to be, on a daily basis, but, on a quarterly basis, reviewing and whatnot.
Yeah, you want them to be an active participant in their financial life.
Exactly.
Can you
Exactly.
tell us really quickly, power of attorney? For those
Mhm.
who don't know what that means,
Mhm.
what does that mean?
So you're giving authority to your business manager to conduct certain levels of business on your behalf. And there are different levels of power of attorney, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's limited and then there's full power of attorney. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of and not just in the music industry, but in the entertainment industry, sports industry, when you have a business manager, sometimes the mutual client feels more comfortable with them handling their uh, certain affairs. So, because they're not available all the time, to sign and to, you know, uh, give permission for things to happen, and they don't want things to have to wait until they are. So they give their business manager permission to do that on their behalf.
Can you give us a high level of how you're helping clients, and for people who maybe just don't understand? There's a lot of different types of financial people who can help you. I actually did a talk recently in New York, and I made sure I had a slide that said, if you're ready to delegate, here are a few things to consider. The first one was a financial therapist. The next was a financial coach. The next was a financial planner. Then a wealth manager. And
Yep.
then I left off the sales, like the insurance salespeople and the
Yep.
investment
Yep.
broker,
Sure.
but yeah, just give us a high level view of like, if somebody was, when is someone ready for what you do? Like, what is it how would you describe to someone who maybe comes to you for the first time?
Right. So, you named a number of things. Sometimes we wear multiple hats, right,
Yeah.
within the industry. So we do, so somebody would come to me when they are in a position to start investing money for their future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their day-to-day needs are being met. They're handling their monthly expenses, and now they have excess capital that they're ready to start putting away for their future.
Yeah.
That's when you sort of want to bring in a wealth manager, a financial advisor. There's lots of different names for what we do,
Yeah.
but and then the first thing we really do for a client, and this really goes for a client that may be completely new to investing and a client that is, you know, worth tens of millions of dollars and has been investing for years. Um, we really like to start with what we call a wealth plan, which is really a financial plan, and we dig super deep into what their overall financial picture looks like
Yeah.
and what they want it to look like. So, we're setting goals. We're talking about what their plans are for the future. And again, it's an ever evolving living thing. So what we talk about today, you have personal things going on in your life, right? So when all of a sudden you have children now, or your kids are now going to college, or you're having, you have education expenses, there's things that change in your life. You're getting married, you're getting divorced, somebody dies, you have an inheritance. There's so many moving things, moving, sort of parts to your financial future. So it's not like it's set in stone, but we really do like to put a plan in place and be on the same page. And then we're constantly reviewing and revising that plan. But the goal is to really make sure that we're on the same page. We understand risk tolerance, we understand what your cash flow needs are. And then we're able to actually make investment recommendations for you based on that.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little more about, for those who don't know, when you say risk tolerance, there's other versions of, there's risk capacity, there's all kinds of lenses to look through risk and how to approach it. What do
Mhm.
you mean by that, and how do you explain that to people who are hearing that for the first time?
Yeah. Yeah. So, risk tolerance really means exactly what it says. How much can you tolerate taking risk in your investment
Mm-hmm.
portfolio? And, I always say when you're investing in the stock market, you have to have a minimum of a 3 to 5 year time horizon, if not longer, because
Absolutely.
you have to be willing to live through certain market cycles.
Yeah.
It's virtually impossible to time the market, right? And it's the only marketplace where when everything is on sale, everyone's running for the hills. And when everything is super expensive, everybody wants to be involved, right? It's
Yeah.
just this very weird backwards mentality. But at the end of the day, markets go through cycles, and there
Yeah.
are various events that affect the market. We're living through it right now, right? We have an election next week that's affecting sort of investor mentality and sentiment, and it's it's really not about who's going to win the election. It's about the uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with interest rates. Are interest rates going lower? All of a sudden, interest rates are higher. So it's, that investors don't like uncertainty, right? So, at the end of the day, we have to assess what your life and lifestyle really is, and whether or not you can take on risk, right? So, meaning, should it be an incredibly conservative portfolio of, 100% treasury bills or fixed
Mm-hmm.
income, or right? And there's various, I'm not going to get into investments, but there's obviously various ways of building conservative portfolios, and there's ways of being more aggressive. And then there's certainly a lot of ways in between of
Yeah.
balancing that portfolio. But it really is a matter of having that conversation, and continuously having that conversation and assessing what, my clients are comfortable with. And when we suspect, or when we have a feeling that, market fluctuations are making them uncomfortable. And listen, nobody wants to open their portfolio and see it down because the market's down today, right? But really understanding that we're investors for the long term, and understanding that markets will fluctuate, but historically speaking, right, investing and staying invested for long periods of time will produce better results for you. For us, we just have to assess whether or not a client is what is appropriate for them within their portfolio from a risk
Absolutely.
perspective.
I tell clients that if it's keeping you up at night, or
That's
it's
right.
causing you stress or anxiety, well, even though this might be logically okay and numbers wise makes sense for you in the long term, if it's affecting your personal life, then we need to make a change.
You need to reassess.
And
Exactly. And I've
yeah,
seen that with clients, you know. And by the way, within the music industry, um, and music and entertainment, I would sort of broadly say, their equity exposure for a lot of them is their career,
yes,
right? That fluctuation, that, they don't have a steady paycheck coming in for the most part, right? We don't know what, are we touring? Are we writing? Are we recording? What's happening? Are we in the studio this year? Do we have a contract? Do we have do we have royalties coming in? There's just so many different factors that affect a musician's life, and they're not necessarily consistent.
yeah,
So it's our job to plan for the worst, right? You hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And this could be a great year. Are we selling a catalog, or do we have a big monetization event coming up? There are lots of different factors that we consider, but a lot of times that those ebbs and flows are really concerning for people within the industry because they don't have a steady income coming in.
mm-hmm.
So those are
I'm
the types of things we plan for.
I'm curious from your psychology major standpoint,
Mhm.
the concept of an artist is basically taking the highest risk possible in their business, and they have an incredibly high risk tolerance there, yet might have a very low risk tolerance in the market. Now, that might be, there's a lot of different ways to approach this, but one could be, um, Warren Buffett always says you only invest in what you know. And, for artists, they know art.
That's right.
And so that could be an explanation, but I'm curious your thoughts of sort of an interesting behavioral psychology behind someone who is taking extraordinary risk in their business,
Mhm.
yet feels incredibly uncomfortable when they see their investments decline.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's you invest in what you know, and what they know is their industry. So they have a comfort level, because that really depends on them. There's a lot that perceivably they feel they can control,
That's the
right?
keyword.
Which may not be the case, but
Yeah.
their art, their work is their life's work, and they do have some control over that. And so,
Yeah.
and it's a lack of understanding and education, and that's why you and I are on the same page, right? About educating and about understanding the importance of financial literacy in your financial future, and really taking an active role, playing an active role in that, and really giving yourself the time to understand, so that you're not making poor decisions. And bringing on the right team is an important step, right?
Absolutely. So I did a few free sessions at this talk that I did, and I got a lot of great questions. But one question that I got, which I think is maybe the best question, is what am I not asking? What am I not, what do I not know? There's the phrase, you don't know what you don't know. And so the only way to even know that is to ask what you don't know to an expert.
Mhm.
And I'm curious what you would say to someone who they don't know what to ask. What is maybe one or maybe multiple things, like some of the most important things, financial literacy wise, financial planning wise, you think people should be starting to understand or ask questions about and understand about their own financial life?
Well, I think, I always bring it back to basics, and it's something that people, for some reason, easily overlook or skip in terms of a step. And that's really, what does your budget look like? What does your every single month, what does your balance sheet look like? And a lot of people can't answer that question
Yeah.
because they have no concept of what they certainly don't have a concept of what they're spending, and some don't really even know what they're bringing
Mm-hmm.
in a month's time, especially if they're actually working and have cash flow coming in from various sources. They may not know, they may not be reading those cash flow reports. I'm always insistent with my clients that I get copied on the cash flow reports that their business managers are producing,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to be in the know, and I want to make sure that I'm understanding what's coming in and what's going out. And I see, I've walked into meetings where, um, you know, business managers handing them cash flow reports, and this is, certain artists are like, this is fake news. There's no way this is what I'm spending, or there's no way. And it's like, well, we're gonna have to take that up with American Express, huh? Like, we're the fraudulent American Express card that's in your name. But they just have no concept of actually what is going out. And the other part of it is what you're paying your team,
Yeah.
what people are making that are working for you. What are you actually getting from this particular payment, right? Like, how much
Mm-hmm.
of it actually goes to you and how much of it is going elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just so important to be really, and listen, you're seeing this in the news all the time, right? You look at, you know, there are artists that are in the news right now saying, obviously I won't mention names, but they're in the news saying, I'm missing money. I don't know what happened, but I don't, but there's money that's just not here. Well, that's years of not paying attention and letting other
Yeah.
people handle. And listen, you have to have a team in place that you trust. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, right? And really understanding who you're paying, who's on your payroll. And sometimes, as artists are growing, they don't even understand who's taking what cut of what. So this large payment comes in and they don't even understand how much of it is actually coming back to them.
Yeah. You have to be the most, you have to be the biggest advocate for your own financial life. You have to care more about your own financial life than anyone else helping you with it.
Of
I always
course.
tell clients that if I ever feel like I care more than you, because I care a lot about
Yeah.
your financial
Same.
life,
Same.
and
Yeah.
if it ever feels like that I care more than you, there can be problems. And you've hinted at this a few times, and I love that you're an advocate of people being active in their financial life, because you're talking about kind of like flying close to the sun, where you're not an active participant, so you don't know what's going on. Now you've left yourself vulnerable to all these things, but then you also don't understand what could possibly be happening that is not in your favor, whether it's negligence or straight up fraud or whatever it
Yeah.
might be.
Yeah.
And if it's so common, I feel that it's common to say, to skip to delegation, I guess, too
Mhm.
quickly. And
Yeah.
it might not be fun to learn some of these topics up front, but boy, I hear so many stories of people who either say, I'm so glad my parents told me something. At least I can have
That's
something
right.
to grasp onto.
That's right.
Or I'm so lucky I have trusted people on my team that actually are doing right by me. And yeah, you got me fired up. So
Yeah. Well, listen, the goal would be to have that team that you have, those trusted advisors in place, right? We don't want clients focused, on the minutia. We don't want, I mean, we want them doing what they do, right?
Right.
And we want them earning, and obviously we are all on the same side of the table, that we want the clients to be successful and earn. That means being in the studio, or that means touring or writing or whatever it is that is earning them the most income. But at the end of the day, they have to have a team in place that they trust, and they should be financially literate enough to audit what's happening at any stage,
Yeah, I'm
right?
trying to think of a successful business that started a business. Just make it up, like a bakery. You're making bread, you're selling the bread,
Mhm.
and then you never set up any systems for yourself financially,
Right,
and you just immediately hire other people to do it. So you never created something that you at least understand. You might not be good at it at first, and you skip to that delegation. I don't know any successful business that's ever done that. Yet it seems that maybe the entertainment industry is potentially prone to that, where someone has moved on to the next stage in their
mhm,
career, and they feel the need to get a team, and but maybe they haven't set up those systems for themselves to where they can say, okay, this is how I've been doing it. I'm ready for you to help me with it. And you probably have a better system, but at least there's that connector where I can say, at least I know what you're talking about to some
right.
degree. I don't know any business a successful business is the key word, that skips that step. I'm curious your thoughts
It's not
there.
even, honestly, it's not exclusive to the music industry. I see it all the time. I see it in marriages where one spouse is
True.
in charge of their finances and the other one has no idea what's going on. And then they
Great
go through a
point.
divorce,
Yeah.
and, you're sitting in a room sort of trying to peel back the layers of the onion and understand where the assets even are.
Yeah.
And I always find that astounding when one of the spouses has no idea, like, what the mortgage payment is or where the assets are, or, and that's when
Yeah.
you run into trouble, right? But it's not exclusive to the music industry, but we do see it a lot within the industry because generally there's a third party involved.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's talk about a little bit with the team. Um, and we've talked about this offline before, but there's like the financial planner sort of is like last in line. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious your thoughts of, maybe they should be first in line, but I get how it just depends. Obviously, is always
Yeah.
the answer, but just curious your thoughts there. And mainly around, I guess to me, it feels like there is a difference between help with your business and help with your personal life. And there are
Mhm.
people that can do both. There are people that just do one or the
Right.
other. Just high level thoughts there for me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've put together panels of industry experts and advisors where in an educational setting, right, where we're saying these are the people that you will need to help you along the way, right? So whether it's an agent or a manager or a lawyer, and I always say, I'm like, generally I'm the last to get hired. Why? Because you have to have money in order to, there's no reason to hire me, right? Until there's
Mm-hmm.
something to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, the people that come before me are there to help you to earn that money. At the end of the day, though, I do think that conversations need to happen earlier than we're being brought in, especially when you're talking about somebody that could potentially have some form of a monetization event, or they're signing a deal, or they're selling a catalog. Like, we should be brought in way earlier than a lot of people do bring us in, because that's when all the planning happens, right? That's when the conversation should be happening, right? When the deals are being negotiated and we have, so we can put the entities in place and have things set up so that everyone's not looking at each other when the event happens and saying, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah.
Right? Scrambling to open accounts, or there's money sitting in checking accounts that shouldn't be there. And so yeah, so there are times when it's appropriate where we are sort of last to be brought in, but I do think that there's something to be said for at least having initial conversations with somebody on the financial planning side earlier than sort of it's happening now.
Especially with simple things like term life insurance or even disability insurance, which is really hard to get, but your
Mhm.
rate's going to be way better if you're younger. There's
Mhm.
also like more time to compound your savings and investments. Even if you don't have as much to invest, even a small amount, you know, with an extra 20 years up front, that compound curve, it can
Yeah.
go up quite fast if you start early, even if you're just doing like a Roth IRA or something like that, before you've gotten to the point where you need a team.
Yeah, of
I could make
course.
the case for a lot of financial planning things that should happen right now for everyone.
Yeah, I mean,
Estate
I
planning,
recently looked at my kids' college savings plans and was surprised. I've been I've been managing money for almost 30 years. And it's kind of it comes out every month. I don't think about it. My husband and I just put
hmm
away for our kids, and we now actually have one in college. And it's amazing how it grows and compounds and and starting early, right?
yeah.
I say, should we tell the older two that the 11-year-old has way more money than way more money than them?
Yeah,
So
I've actually had situations where people kind of want to make it even, but they don't realize that the kids are different ages. So you
yeah, of
can make it
course.
even, but it's not going to be even by the time they get to college. Um,
No, because right, they're different ages, and also we started at different times, right?
yeah,
So yeah, it's funny, but yeah, so he's going to be just fine, that little one.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so can you talk a little bit about how I mentioned earlier, like how you're communicating with your clients, but then can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned, sometimes it's just the business manager, or if they just have a CPA or a
Mhm.
state attorney, entertainment attorney, there's all these people that could possibly be in the fold. Can you talk a little bit about what it looks like to sort of work as a team
Mhm.
and communicate
Sure.
together?
Yeah, and you just named lots of different sort of what we call centers of influence,
Yeah.
right? So that's where we get the bulk of our referrals would be from that center of influence, somebody that's within the client's life that is advising them in some way or capacity on their, finances. So, and then they bring us in on the investment and planning side. So depending on sort of who has brought us in, we always like to have an open dialogue with the overall team. And even if you haven't come to me through your CPA, I always will ask to have a conversation with your CPA.
Yeah.
Depending on what stage of life you're in, obviously the estate planning is, attorney could play a big role in our conversations, right? So it depends, and it's client specific. Obviously, we have no two clients that are alike, but
Yeah.
the more communication within your team, the better. So we are an open book as it pertains to a client's overall team. And we like to have as many people on that team involved as possible. And so we will schedule quarterly calls, and a lot of times, the accountant or the business manager will join those calls as well.
Yeah. Just to be on the same page
Yeah, of course.
in the best interest of who you're working with.
That's right. That's right.
Is there anything
And they can
else?
provide
Oh,
information that maybe the client doesn't know.
exactly.
Right. And so we want to make sure, and we do the same. So we just kind of have to make sure that we're all over, we don't believe in over communicating, right? So
Yeah.
just making sure we're all on the same page.
I'm curious your thoughts on this concept of sort of how the team is paid. One I've said this before, but where in the entertainment industry, it's common for team members to be paid as a percent of income, which it makes sense when those people are there to help the business, right? So naturally, their incentive to help you is to keep your business going and to have your business
Sure.
improve. I don't think that's a bad thing. It could lead to a negligence of the personal side of that person's life, right? Because those people, not that they don't care about the person personally, but their job is to help their business. And I'm wondering if you have had experiences like that where you can tell that certain team members, like they're focused on this part, and maybe there's other parts that other people come in and address instead. Just
Mhm.
curious your thoughts there on the structure
Well,
of how people work and how that makes sense when you have a whole team with sort of different, I say incentives, that's not the right word, but focus of how they participate as a part of the
sure.
team.
Um, I think everybody has a role, right? And there's room for everybody at the table. And I think
hmm
that sometimes it's important to stay in your lane. So you really don't want to have your, you know, attorney involved in some of your personal financial decisions, right? For
Right.
instance, but
Yeah.
business wise, you want them involved in negotiating the contracts for you, but really,
Hmm.
do you want them on the financial planning side of things, right? So I think everybody kind of stays in their lane and is paid appropriately for whatever their role is on the team.
Yeah, I agree. Is there anything else on your mind that you'd like to share? Financial literacy, financial planning?
I mean, I think we covered a lot. And the reason why we're here today is because you and I are so like-minded and we sort of have a lot of common goals. And that is a lot of what we do is giving back, right? This isn't where we're making the bulk of our income, but it's really about believing that, for me, and especially for my team, which as I sort of mentioned, we're an all-female team, and we've had to, I just talked about this in an interview pertaining to women's sports, actually, but we've had to break through so many barriers, and so a lot of what we do is about giving back and feeling like we want to lift other women, other people, other,
Hmm.
whether you're artist or entertainer or an athlete, giving them an opportunity to sit in a room and not feel like they're asking dumb questions
Yeah,
in a really non-threatening way. And, for us, it's just about sort of giving that time and believing that it could really change the course of one's life.
absolutely. And we just passed that. It's sort of an odd milestone of 50 years since women could have credit cards and be named on a mortgage. It's,
Sort of
wife and I were
incredible.
talking about that, and it's like, that's absolutely insane.
It's
Like, to
insane.
think that, we're actually we're in the shallow part of this part of our world history. Like, we're living in,
Yeah,
and it's just wild. But it's also really cool to see how far women have come in such a short time, given the restrictions placed
that's
on
true.
them. It's something to commend for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you would think that the needle has moved. It hasn't moved as much as you would think, I guess I would say. I mean, we're
Yes.
still in my industry, we're still maybe 18%, I think, is the industry average of, women in that sit in my seat. It's pretty low. There's there's there have been more times where I'm the only woman in the room than not,
Yes.
let's just
That's what I
say.
was going to say. I'm sure that's happened to you quite often,
Yeah.
and you've had to navigate that. And I've talked to many women about that experience, and I'll never have that experience, but I commend you as well because I probably wouldn't feel comfortable in those rooms either because it's a bunch of guys, but just because of I'm sure there's a lot of energy. I'll phrase it that way in those rooms that it's missing other types of energy that are incredibly valuable and helpful. So I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing and also supporting other women in your business. And I'm sure you work with a lot of women clients as well.
Mhm.
Um, so real quick, do you want to talk about Hope for a Cure and your
MS Hope for
participation?
a Cure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is our foundation that one of my best friends and I started many years ago. My mom actually had MS for most of my life. So she was diagnosed when I was 12 and she actually just passed away last year. But so it was something that was just a part of my family's life for so many years.
Hmm.
And, we started doing the MS walk, my family and friends, and we started raising all this money. And that's actually where I met EJ Levy, who's my co-founder, and she's the president of the organization. She really handles all the day to day, and she has MS, and that's how we met. So our teams were always the number one and two teams in New York, and then she and I became the number one and two fundraisers in the country.
Amazing.
And so we were just, we were raising all this money and realizing that we wanted to be able to better direct the funds. So we started our own foundation. And we've raised over $13 million. And for me, it was obviously always never giving up the fight for my mom, but
Yeah.
really it's for others and families that are living with MS. We support a lot of the MS research centers in our community. We pay the salaries of many of the social workers that work at the MS research centers. So we're doing some incredible work. And because we're so small, we're really nimble. We're able to move quickly. with relief funding for things. We're sending kids to college. In my parents' honor, I actually lost both my parents in the last couple of years. And so my dad was my mom's caregiver, and my mom obviously having MS, and uh, I funded an adult day program for people living with MS. And so it's sometimes the only day of the week that these people get out of their homes, right? And
Yeah.
so we pay for them, we pay for their caregivers. They're able to have a, nice meal. There's educational seminars that happen. So that's just one of the things that we're doing. But that was a grant that I named my parents' honor. So yeah, so we're doing some incredible work. And I always say that's like the most important work I do, right? I always say being a mom, a wife and a mom to my kids, my work with MS Hope, and then just run $1.5 billion business on the side. But
Yeah.
that's what affords us, the ability to do all these other great things that we're doing. So
Yeah.
super important work. So thank you for acknowledging it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's amazing. And thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry to hear about both your parents now. That is wonderful. So please share how people can get involved. But before we do that, what's your definition of a thriving musician?
I'm going to rephrase that. What's my definition of success in general? Right. So we actually have a defining success series that my partners and I do, which is a quarterly breakfast that we hold for executives that are at various stages of their lives. And I could sort of overlap that with musicians, right? Like what do you define success as today? And that could change. So a thriving musician at the early stages of their career could be so different than a thriving musician later in life. And I've had the pleasure of working with many musicians through various stages of life, and what they perceive as thriving in their 60s and 70s is certainly not what they were, talking about in their 30s and 40s, right? So I think it really depends on the stage of life you're in, and really defining what feels like success to you at whatever stage of life you're in. And you really just want people to be loving what they do and hopefully being fairly compensated for their work.
Absolutely. I think that's a great definition. How can listeners learn more about you and or get in touch with you?
So they can go to our website, which is, perhaps you could share, but the LSS Group website at RBC, and they can reach me. Email is usually the best. I'm just eden.lopez@rbc.com.
And how about Hope for a Cure? How can people get
They
involved?
can go to our website as well. And it's just, if you just look up MS Hope for a Cure, .org, you'll find us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was
Thank you for
fantastic.
having us.
Absolutely. So if you enjoyed this episode, you found it insightful or useful, feel free to share with another thriving musician, or better yet, leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I hope you all have a great day. Keep thriving.
Want more ideas, tools, and resources on how to achieve financial independence? Visit motifplanning.com. Read the leading financial blog for music professionals, sign up for the financial literacy newsletter, and keep thriving.